Levi Strauss, and I'm recording the CFO Thought Leader podcast driven by Jack Sweeney himself. Thanks for having me, Jack. It's been great talking to you and engaging with you on some key questions.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. Jack here, bringing you a special episode along with some milestone updates. It's that graduation time of year. You can feel it. Perhaps you recently attended one. And we too feel as though we experienced something of a graduation of sorts. It was May 15th. We published our 1,000th episode. That was hard to believe. It kind of drove home the fact that we've been at this a while now. 1,000 CFO conversations that we have published exclusively for you. And since I have rarely shared anything with you about the platform, the podcast and the blog and the videos, and I hope you'll indulge me here, when I mention once more our mission, the big one. We created CFO Thought Leader as a platform to help finance leaders share their career experiences in ways that larger numbers of executives can relate to and find more engaging. And, we know that by learning about the successes and, of course, the failures of others, those leaders and senior finance executives that populate our growing audiences can more confidently advance their own narratives as they chart their leadership paths and take inspired action. That's our mission. That's what, those are the exact words. And yes, I did read them. Sorry if it sounded templated, but that's our mission. And we haven't strayed from that. And as we hit episode 1,000, we want finance leaders to know now more than ever that this platform is for them. This is where they have an open invitation to share their experience, share their stories. And so, alongside our 1,000th episode, we have yet another milestone. And that is that we have just published a book titled The CFO 500, The Finance Career Builder's Guide to the C-Suite. And it'll shortly be available for purchase on our mothership, cfothoughtleader.com. If it's not in May, it will be June 1st, as we are told by our web developer. It'll all be available. Just visit us at cfothoughtleader.com. Basically, the book contains profiles of 500 of our CFO guests from over the years. And what we've done is dedicate a page to each of the CFOs. And we have a write-up, sort of their bio, and a QR code displayed on each page, allowing the reader to quickly access the actual audio podcast episode that featured the profile CFO. So the reader can sort of breezily thumb through the edition and pick out the finance leaders they're most interested in learning about. So you can go ahead and fold a corner. Print media allows you to do so. So the book, in its own way, we view as a milestone. And by mentioning it, it allows me to segue to Fatema El-Wakeel, who is a data strategy and analytics evangelist, a PhD data strategy researcher at the University of Cambridge, and get this, head of global data platforms at Unilever. We are featuring Fatema on this episode, and she is someone I know you'll find very interesting. Of course, a little more context would likely be helpful. Fatema is also a non-executive board member of the Institute of Management Accountants, the IMA. It's an association I'm supportive of and one CFO Thought Leader seeks to partner with when the opportunity presents itself. which it has from time to time. And it's a fact that led me to ask the highly approachable Mike DePrisco, who's president of the IMA, to provide us with a foreword to the CFO 500, which he graciously agreed to do. And so now we're coming full circle here because IMA 24, that's the IMA Annual Accounting and Finance Conference, it's being held in San Antonio next month from June 9th to 12th. And I plan to attend, as I did last year, and I'll be there with a stack, a CFO 500 volumes under both arms. Not really. No, not really. I'll have a table, though, set up inside the Expo Center. If you're attending, I hope you'll come by and say hi. I will be giving away a few books, a few CFO 500s, but just a few. Nonetheless, it would be great to connect, as I hope to, with many of the attendees. And maybe we'll have the opportunity to meet Fatema in person. She'll be in attendance, or at least she told me they have a board meeting. The IMA apparently has a board meeting adjacent to the conference or during the conference. So she expects to be in attendance as well. But right now, here's my conversation with data evangelist Fatema El-Wakeel. Hello, we're speaking with Fatema El-Wakeel. Fatema wears many hats these days. Broadly speaking, she's a data strategy and analytics evangelist, a PhD data strategy researcher at the University of Cambridge, head of global data platforms at Unilever, and a global non-executive director for the Institute of Management Accountants. Fatema, welcome.
Hi, Jack. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the chat today.
So, Fatema, it's unusual that we get to speak to someone like yourself, first of all. And I mentioned you wear many hats and supplied some titles there because I think you have a foot in academics and one in industry. You're part of multiple worlds today. And I wonder, when you're introducing yourself to a gathering of some kind, what is it that you share? How do you explain the wealth of experiences that you have?
When I introduce myself to audience, I say I am a data strategy evangelist, and I do that in practice and in academia. I have a very clear mission in life, and I'm very fortunate to be able to say that. So I know that my mission in life is basically to support organizations and individuals, professionals, to create the right data strategies for scaling emerging technologies and analytics within organizations. So this is how I kind of see my career and my mission in life, and I do that, as you said, in the industry as well in academia. I'm also fortunate to be act as a non-executive director and on several boards. Really try to spread this data strategy word out there and get it to be common somehow.
How long ago did the data strategy career begin, really? And again, we know for 20 years now, people have been talking data strategy, but really it seems to have, it's in high gear now, no doubt. But what would you tell us? When did this begin?
I think the data the data has always been a common word. Like, how can we make use of our data? How can we strategize it? And with every change in technologies, as you said, it's been 20 years or more. Everyone's like, oh, how can we make this more strategic? How can we use data strategically? But now I think with all the emerging technologies, and all the, as well, in addition to emerging technologies, the analytics and how to get insights out of data, it became very important to understand the strategy when you start to say, okay, how can I utilize my data? How can I use governance? How can I use the right tools? How can I scale it, create the right data culture? So all of a sudden, data strategy became very rich. And people are able to speak about it, and it is important in organizations.
So let me ask this. As a data strategist evangelist. How is the nature of what you do in the academic world differ from what you do in the corporate environment? What how would you delineate?
So tell me, okay, so let me tell you something. Let's start with the nature of both worlds, and then maybe that will kind of lead nicely into why I am actually part of both worlds. So academia and industry, kind of, I see them going hand in hand. Okay. So with academia, when we look at data strategy, we often focus on research, advancing knowledge, looking at the theory, and answering research questions, which are normally problem statements, really, from a research perspective. We look at projects driven by curiosity, intellectual, thinking. So academia is more of like, there's nothing right or wrong. Think out of the box. You have to prove it. You basically try to come with a hypothesis and you're proving it, whether it's correct or wrong. So it's linking, you can see it as linking theory to practice. While in the corporate world, it's more about looking at commercial priorities, problem statements from an organization perspective, the problems that we have right now in the industry or in the organization, how can we solve it? Not regardless of the theory, but the priority is really you need to take an action because the organization is at stake, or you want to expand, or you need to take a decision. And I think bringing both worlds together, especially with the academia, and with academia, you can think about the business side of it. So really looking at business theories and business studies and strategy and linking them to the data engineering piece or the engineering part of it. And when you link both academia and industry, this is when you get the best of both worlds. So when I'm sat in a meeting, whether in industry or in academia, I can, if I'm in the academic world, I'm thinking, okay, looking at theories, but I'm wearing also my industry hat. I know how things happen in the industry. So I can add value to this conversation and support them. Say, oh, no, this is not how it works. Actually, I've seen X and Y do it this way. And when I'm doing my corporate job, I can say, oh, you know what? But from a management perspective, if we do this and that, and probably I'm getting this from the theory at that time, I'd be like, oh, we can look strategically into X, Y, and Z because, again, from a business domain perspective and from a theory perspective, I have this knowledge. So I'm finally being able to link it back to the business world. And I think this is where I think my passion is. I feel like I can wear both hats and I can add value to both worlds. And I do enjoy it. I feel like it just makes me, I don't know, stand out somehow or, add value to the place that I'm in.
So often in the corporate environment, I think it's troubleshooting and being tactical is a big part of execution. Like you have to figure out how to do things. Maybe the way you thought it was going to happen isn't, and you find a workaround, or you perhaps invest more in changing the data or cleaning it up. Is this a reality that you see, or not necessarily? Are you a tactical thinker as well as a strategist?
I would say, I know it's a very weird answer, but it really depends, Jack. So sometimes I think you have to be very, very tactical and just act because the business will not wait. It's basically, it costs the company pounds value. You just need to really make sure you take the right decision and quickly. But sometimes you can take the tactical solution and say, you know what, this is the tactical decision. I realize, and sometimes I do that consciously. I say, I know it's a tactical decision. This is not 100%. I'll take that decision and bring everyone obviously on board, very transparent. And then I say, okay, now the long-term solution is to actually do this in the background for I don't know how long, and then come back and, change that tactical solution to a long-term solution. So I think it really depends. Sometimes you can wait till you find the right solution, but sometimes you do need to take this tactical solution, especially if it's technical.
It's clear from talking to finance leaders that in many ways, data strategy has sort of like enabled them, empowered them to reach out across their organizations and connect with parts of the organization or functional areas that ordinarily they might not have, or they might not have made a priority to sit in on certain meetings. As you sit in corporate meetings with executives, who sits around the table? And it's quite a mix, I believe. But again, I think if you went back 5 years, the finance folks who are seated at that table are facing people that they just did not connect with if you go back in time.
I think you're spot on, Jack. There really it is different than 5 years ago. Things have changed massively. I think, and also looking at it from an academic and from a corporate side, it is different. So when I'll give both examples. Like if I'm in academia, normally if I'm speaking about decision making when it comes to data and creating, roadmaps or creating models or frameworks, that would be probably researchers, faculty members, and industry partners. So I work closely with different industry partners to make sure that whatever we're creating in academia works for the industry. Because again, we're not siloed. And that's the beauty of the university I'm in. The discussions run around methodologies, theories, framework, long-term solutions, and industry applications. While if I speak about the corporate world, it's not much different, to be honest, but it has changed. Like and I would say it depends on few things. So first of all, the people around the room will change, but you'll find executive managers, cross-functional teams compared to before. Before you would see a lot of IT people or technical people, especially with, 10 or 20 years ago. While now really cross-functional, because if I'm doing an analytics project, then I'd need, I don't know, logistics, engineering, marketing. There is no rarely do you find a standalone project where I'm doing a project for the marketing team and no one else is involved. But I'd say it also depends on the maturity of the organization and the industry. So having worked across different industries like IT or automotive, FMCG, hospitality, the maturity of the organization and the people who have a seat at the table is very different. And I think that makes a lot of the decision making and the meetings different as well.
One of the things that confronts CFOs, they get recruited and are positioned to step in to a new CFO position. Is there a question that they should be asking to determine whether this company is as data savvy as they're led to believe? And I think it's an important one because very often there is just data chaos in certain companies. What is the question that a CFO candidate might ask to get a read on whether their prospective employer or future management team partners are data savvy?
I'd say a few questions. First of all, they need to understand. So depends on the size of the organization, okay? But that goes across all, whether it's a small organization or a big organization. They need to know the culture, the data culture within the organization, how important the data culture is. Because people speak a lot like, oh, data is really, really important. And it is our priority. We are a very data-driven company. But then you start speaking to them more, and I'm like, are you really?
Ha, exactly. So what is it that they can ask? What is that question?
I would say, what is your data plan? Who is leading data within the organization? So a company, aside from Google and Amazon, okay, or the tech companies, where they might not have a chief data officer or someone who has a seat at the table, because those companies might live and breathe data. Other than that, I'd expect a data person to have a seat at the table, and that shows the maturity of the organization.
They're willing to pay for a senior executive to have that title, and it shows the investment is there in terms
Exactly.
of the organizational leadership.
And that person should have a data strategy. They should be able, even if they don't have it named or the name there as a data strategy, they should be able to speak about the roadmap that they're having for the data. Like what is the data maturity? Do they have the data in the data lake? Are they using emerging tech? Are they using AI? How are they using AI? How are they using, I don't know, maybe digital twins? And I think those are the kind of conversations that should happen. And also, what are the challenges? Because a simple thing, like when I speak to someone, it's like, okay, what are the challenges you're facing? The answer to that question speaks volumes. Because if their data is, very siloed and they can't really put the data in the data lake, or there's no governance, or it just shows you the maturity. And then the next question would be, okay, so you have this problem, that's good. As they say, what do they say? They say, knowing the problem is halfway to the solution, something along the lines. But knowing the problem is great. Now that you know the problem, are you acting on it? Like, what is your plan to solve it?
Fatima, we know that you've been involved in a number of different studies. The one that was brought to my attention was the Jaguar Landover study regarding data strategy. Can you talk about one of the studies with us, one or two, a few of the studies with us? What would you share?
So what we did for Jaguar Land Rover, at that time I was leading the data for the financial services, and we managed to actually create a strategy during COVID. So we started the data journey during COVID, which was very interesting, and that's why it was published in the Cambridge white paper or journal. But we managed to create a proper data strategy, and that meant actually understanding the maturity of where we were at that time, understanding the tools that were available. Jaguar Land Rover, it wasn't like it is out there. Jaguar Land Rover operates a hub and spoke. So basically making sure that we're aligned to the hub and making sure that we're aligned to the central team, which I mentioned before, in terms of tools, looking at the roadmap, prioritizing projects and starting to deliver, bringing everyone on board because it was such a strategic and important thing to do, especially during COVID, where it was a bit of a challenge, and being able to deliver. And that was a turnaround. And I can put the link to the paper in the I can send you in the show notes. Yeah, that would be great. It was really part of the things that we created. Like it was something that I am very proud of, and the team. It was an amazing team. So that's one of the examples. I think another example. No, 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 no. Look, I'm going to tell you the examples, and you just put them somewhere. Okay, we just make sure. I think the person who's editing this will hate me. So apologies when you hear it, please. Whoever is editing it. The other things that people can actually read about. So one of the things that Unilever is really good at is the use of emerging tech. And you can find a lot of AI case studies and looking at the metaverse. So there's metaverse stuff out there, case studies where you can see Unilever using the metaverse, Unilever using AI, digital twins, which one of the few organizations that we actually use digital twins, and we use emerging tech in anger. And it's out there, so I'm not saying anything confidential. But we have a great data strategy and a roadmap for technology, which is, I'd say, very few organizations have their act together, which is really good.
I've heard you use this one phrase several times now, I think. So I'm going to ask you, what are the characteristics of a data culture? What's a data culture about?
So data culture is something that's very close to my heart, because I think it can determine the success of the organization. And it's one of the things that matures. So I see data culture as something that you start with and it continues to improve. And the way you can think about it is, an organization doesn't have any data, it is interested in having data, but it doesn't have a plan. They don't know what to do. But the CEO is like, oh, data is important. And that CEO, he or she, they just start speaking about the data culture, the importance of it, creating the data. And then straight away there's no just take into account that there's no plan. They're just speaking about it. And the organization is still speaking about it. So that's the first level of maturity. And then the second level would be like they start hiring a CDO. And that CDO starts to hire a team. But then they start building the data culture within the team and a bit around the organization, but still not 100%, still going through this maturity. And then you start, the CDO starts to speak to different stakeholders and to other people on the C-suite. And this is, so even the data culture, it matures. And it has so many things involved in it. It has the way, it's not only the technical data, but it has the roadmap for your data strategy. It has the roadmap for the technology, what emerging technology you need. It has upskilling your employees, because you have people in the organization that you don't want to lose. They really know everything inside out. As much as you want to hire and have, you know, new blood, you want also to keep the people there. So how can you upskill those people? If you're bringing someone in, how can you keep this data culture? So data culture is so rich and there's so many aspects to it. And I wish organizations spoke more about it. And it's, yeah, I wish it took more, you know, it took, yeah, but how do I say? Don't know. Anyways, don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna take a wild guess here, or a not so wild guess. But one of the primary reason when a data strategy fails, the reason most often is because the leadership hasn't gotten behind it. The leadership is not championing a data culture. Would you agree? What would you tell us?
I do agree. I think it has to be the top management, because again, it's the top management kind of directs the organization. They steer the ship. And if they're not all steering in the same direction, it will not work. Think about it this way, because you said, would it fail or not? And how would it fail? Is if they're all steering in different directions, then there would be a problem. But if they're all steering in the same direction, with underpinned data culture, to the data strategy as a whole, because again, the data strategy, think about it as the umbrella that covers all the organization, because you need to have really, you can't have data in marketing done differently than the data, the way the data is done in finance. And then you're asking both of them to be connected. They're using different tools. The tools don't speak to each other. And then the teams are working very differently, whether agile or some people, they don't know what's happening there. So if you don't have this data culture and you have the tools correct, the governance correct, the strategy, the driving the business, they're all on the same page, then obviously they can fail, but they might not even succeed at the same, level. So that's another problem, because you'll start sorting out all those problems rather than saying, okay, we have things, let's just work together actually to, because think about it this way, technology is developing as we speak, you and I now. So we're speaking about AI, digital twins, metaverse. There's so many new emerging tech out there. And with that, the organization is trying to cope with the change. So it needs to steer in the same direction to kind of the wind coming from down. I'm trying to do an analogy here. The wind coming from the emerging techs and all the changes around, and what do we prioritize and how do we use it? And so if the organization itself is having challenges within and they're not on the same page, then you're really as if you're fighting inside and out, or trying to, well, not fighting, but sorting things inside and out, which is not the ideal situation.
So now let's add AI to the mix here in our discussion. And we know I always think of AI as more or less an accelerator for data strategies. Sometimes in our discussions, finance leaders almost used AI and data interchangeably. You know, it's sort of part of the same discussion. What do you make of that?
So I think when you said it, they're used synonymously. They are. Sometimes when I'm in conferences or I meet people and we speak about this, they're like, yeah, we have an AI strategy and it covers everything. And I'm like, No, it shouldn't be the same. Those are two different things. But so think about it as I'd see them as complementary and I see them as one part of the other. So complementary in the terms that the AI strategy should be part of your data strategy. So data strategy is the big umbrella that has your foundations in. It has the data quality, it has the data privacy, governance, and part of it as well is the emerging technologies. And part of emerging technology is the AI. So AI is part of your technology. And because AI is so big at the moment and it's going through a lot of transformation, you definitely can have an AI strategy, but it has to be aligned to your data strategy, which is the big umbrella there. And your AI strategy can actually help your data strategy. So think about it as a two-way thing. So your data strategy kind of governs, it's the umbrella, it shows what should happen in the AI strategy, but also the AI strategy can enable insight and drive action to your data strategy. It can support it through data strategy adoption, machine learning algorithms, help the data strategy with governance, help it with to uncover patterns. So, and I think this is how I see them. They are not. Yeah, I think an AI, a data strategy is definitely robust, and it has to be really important to have your AI strategy, but your AI strategy can complement it. But the big umbrella is the data strategy. That's how I see it.
I'm wondering if you could maybe help us understand better the organizational structure that sort of embraces or champions data strategy, the people involved in it, how organizations make certain, they have the right positions populated. Anything?
So with the organizations, it depends on the organization, it depends on the industry and to what extent the industry is mature. As I said, I've worked in different industries, and automotive is very different than hospitality, than IT, than FMCG, for example. But the way I would look at it is, normally you'd find when you look at data, it is split into one of three. Either it is centralized, decentralized, or hybrid. Centralized means that you might have a CDO on the C-suite. You have a central function doing all the data for the organization, and everything is done from the central. Okay, so and this is an example where there are a lot of organizations working this way. So this is an example. The other example is the decentralized, where you actually everything is embedded, and I haven't seen an organization that had that data that much embedded, even IT or tech companies. But this is a very decentralized where everyone is living and breathing data. The hybrid in the middle is like a hub and spoke. It's where you have a central of excellence, a data central of excellence, but you have an analytics team within each function. And each analytics team, so you'd have an analytics team in finance, analytics team in purchasing, analytics team in marketing, and each of them are doing the same thing aligned to the overall central team. So those are the three main, I'd say, setups in organizations. And it depends on the maturity. It depends how much they want to invest. It depends on the skills as well, because the more you have teams, the more you need to hire more people.
Well, Fatima, we've enjoyed speaking with you, and it's darn near 30 minutes, and I don't want to press up against our deadline with you. We do appreciate the time and look forward perhaps to connecting with you at IMA 24.
And I really enjoyed the chat. It was really nice.
Likewise, Fatima. And Fatima has offered to supply us with some URLs to the reports, the Jaguar Landover report and a Unilever report study on data strategy. And we'll attach those to the show notes page of this episode. As always, we'll end this episode by saying thank you for listening.